Let's picture this. A nation is born, literally overnight. After 400 years of brutal slavery, the people of Israel are finally free. The chains are off, the gates are open. But that freedom raises a huge question. What do you do in those first few moments? What happens next?
Seriously, put yourself in their sandals for a second. You are standing on the edge of a completely new reality. What is your number one priority? Are you trying to set up a government, claim some land, maybe build an army for protection? Well, the answer we get in this chapter is actually none of those things. It's something way more fundamental.
So the very first instruction given to this brand new nation has nothing to do with power or politics. Nope, it's all about dedication and memory. It's a command that's really going to set the tone for everything else that comes after.
And here it is. The first law of freedom is a call to consecrate, to set apart every single firstborn. Now, this isn't some casual suggestion. It's presented as the absolute foundational principle for this new society. The idea is that everything that comes first, everything that starts a new line, belongs to God.
And it's so interesting to break down what that word consecrate really means. See, it's not just about giving something away. It's this act of recognition, of saying, this was never really mine to begin with. It's about formally stamping something as sacred, as set aside for higher purpose. And the law gets really, really specific, as you can see here. Firstborn sons have to be redeemed, basically bought back with an offering, because their lives were spared back in Egypt. Clean animals, like livestock, they belong to God, straight up. But then you get to an unclean animal, like a donkey, and you have a choice. You either redeem it with a lamb, or you have to destroy it. It creates this whole system where this core principle applies to every part of life.
But why? Why start with this law of all things? What's the point? Well, it turns out this command and the ones that come right after it are all part of this incredible system for creating a national memory. They're designed to make absolutely sure the story of their freedom is never, ever forgotten.
And this brings us right to the festival of unleavened bread. For 7 whole days, no yeast is allowed. At all. Anywhere. The entire week is this physical, tangible reminder of just how fast they had to escape. They didn't even have time to let their bread rise. See, this isn't just a story you tell, it's an experience you relive every single year. It turns memory into an action. The text uses this really powerful metaphor here. These practices are meant to be as visible and as much a part of you as a sign on your hand or a symbol on your forehead. They're not just ideas, they're physical things you do, woven right into daily life, which makes remembering something you do, not just something you think.
And here's where we see the real genius of the whole system. It is designed to make people curious. It's all set up so that the next generation will see these kind of strange rituals, eating this flatbread, setting aside the firstborn animal, and they're bound to ask the most important question there is. Why? Why do we do this?
And get this, the answer is scripted. It's a direct, powerful story. We do this because of what God did for us. The ritual becomes the trigger for the story. It connects the sacrifice today directly back to that night God spared their firstborn during the final plague and brought them out of slavery. It's brilliant. It's how a story stays alive. Okay, so with these laws of memory firmly in place, the nation finally takes its first physical steps. We're moving from the why they left to the how and where of their journey. Now, this is fascinating. The very first decision of the journey is a detour. The fastest way to get where they were going was straight up the coast, but they don't take it. The text explains that God leads them the long way round to avoid a war with the Philistines right out of the gate. The fear was that an immediate, tough battle might just crush their spirits and make them want to run right back to the misery they knew in Egypt. So their route starts to take shape. They leave Sukkoth, they completely bypass that main road, and instead, they turn toward the desert and the Red Sea. And they make their first camp right on the edge of this massive, unknown wilderness. And right in the middle of all this movement and uncertainty, there's this one incredible detail. Moses is carrying the bones of Joseph. We're talking generations earlier. Joseph had made his family swear an oath that when God finally brought them back to the Promised Land, they would take his remains with them. This isn't just a trip into the future. It's the fulfillment of a promise that's centuries old.
So you've got this vulnerable group of people, basically refugees, in a dangerous wilderness with a long, uncertain journey ahead. How do they even know which way to go? How do they survive? Well, the chapter ends with one of the most iconic images in the entire story. They don't get a map, they get a guide. And check this out. By day, it's a massive pillar of cloud that leads them, which probably also gave them some much-needed shade from that brutal desert sun. And then by night, that same pillar transforms into a pillar of fire, giving them light and warmth. This thing is their compass, their protection, and their constant companion, all rolled into one. Let's just pause on that for a second. This wasn't some fleeting miracle or a one-time sign. This was a constant, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week presence. It didn't matter if they were on the march or stopped to rest, in the blinding sun of noon or the pitch black of a desert night, they were never, ever alone. And the chapter just hammers this point home with this final, powerful statement. The guide never left. It was a steadfast, unwavering presence leading them forward. For a nation of former slaves, taking their very first steps into the unknown, can you imagine how much that visible, supernatural guidance would have meant? It would have been everything. So as we wrap this up, we're left with this question that just echoes out from this ancient text. What does a nation choose to never forget? This chapter seems to argue that a nation's real identity isn't first built with borders or armies, but by the story it tells about itself. The very first act of this new nation wasn't to conquer a piece of land, but to conquer forgetfulness, and to build an entire culture around making sure its origin story would always survive.